Welcome to the 14th episode of the Perfectly Imperfect Spiritual Podcast. My today's guest, Lara Wells, is a psychic medium with whom I had my first mediumship reading, and this was before I knew I was one myself. I later on heard during Lara's online live readings, you are a medium too. And of course, I burst into laughter thinking, sure, and the rest is history. I could spend now over an hour introducing Lara, and I don't think I would have finished. So I'm glad that Lara kindly sent me a short introduction about herself. So we'll have a starting point. Lara is a national and international award-winning medium. She's a professional intuitive, as well as an author, coach, and mentor for living your most amazing mystic life. Aware she was different from the age of 4, Lara would predict things for her mother's friends, much to their amazement, and her penchant for seances in her early teens. She decided after a career with racehorses and then nurses training that helping and serving others, she could do no better than the mystical way. Runner-up in the LifeWire Business Award, she was told that she would have won the £1,500 first prize had she employed somebody. She threw herself into traveling and performing her remarkable gift as a medium, as well as mentoring women to craft their most amazing lifestyles and businesses. Lara is now known as the Millionaire Mystic. Welcome, Lara, to the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, thank you. What an introduction, eh?
Thank you.
I know I was, when you said seances, right? So seances, obviously, they are, when I was like 15, way back then, you used to be able to gather tokens from like petrol stations and things, like if you spent so much, on petrol, my mum would get like, little token things that you collected. And then once you got X amount, you could choose what you wanted. Well, she would get glasses, as in, like glasses that you drink out of, glasses, right? Amongst other things. And she'd managed to collect quite a set. But of course, during my seance phase, I would smash the glasses afterwards. So I'd kind of like gone through one by one all my mum's glasses that she'd that she'd done. And then one day she had visitors round, and of course she went to like get them a drink and there were no glasses. So I was grounded for a while then.
I can imagine. Well, can we talk now about like seances and maybe your experience? Because I know you're originally from Scotland, and I do live in Scotland as well. Well, any histories or any like your knowledge about haunted places, poltergeists? Because I know you've got a huge experience with like clearing the energies, but also working with the spirit world. And I feel it's so important because every time I've got some visitors coming to Scotland, they all want to visit castles, they all want to go on a ghost tour. And actually what I've realized, I've been living in Scotland for over 16 years now, that spirit world for us psychic mediums, it becomes an integral part of our lives, because it's only now that I'm living in a new flat that's only 70 years. But all my previous flats were in Victorian tenement buildings from 19th century. So it's actually common to see Victorian spirit like dressed in period features. So yeah, I'm wondering what's your experience, because I know you stayed with various old places.
I've owned my own castle as well.
Yes.
Right. So I've owned my own castle. I've lived in manors. My first experience, though, right, with a poltergeist that I remember, right, was actually in England. And it was my eldest son's father. He was a little bit older than me. And we'd stopped at a hotel, right, on the way from, because I lived down in Worcestershire at the time, on the way up to see my mum and my dad in Scotland. And he'd gone to sleep. I'd gone to sleep as well. And on the face of it, nothing was different. And I woke up, right, during the night, and I switched the light on, and all the wardrobe doors were open. Everything was thrown out the wardrobes. It was a noise that had woken me up, right? And I probably dismissed it, thinking, oh, it was just people coming backwards and forwards. But the truth of the matter was, it was actually very quiet where we were. There was a poltergeist in the room, and we had poltergeist activity, right? I even woke him up and said, did you get up and open like drawers or wardrobes or anything? Because like everything was heaved out, and I thought, God, it's like it's like more being here. What on earth? And he's like, no. And I thought, right enough, I would have woken up if he'd got up. At the time he was out for the count. And it was, when the hairs stand up in the back of your neck, it was like that. It's the okay then. Right. Now, this was in the time before I realized I was a medium too. Right. I was, I'd done seances. I did, I'd predicted for people and stuff, like just whatever, came to my intuition, not realizing what I was doing, by the way. And I, from a very early age, I had a fundamental, I was born knowing that there are spirits around. I mean, most of the time, most people don't see them because they don't know what to look for, because they blend in and they look like other people. I've even walked past them, at times. I've spoken to them only to realize afterwards, when nobody else saw them, and I'm talking about in public, that nobody could actually see them. Right. Or it was, it was some very, very bizarre situations, which I have to say, and this will happen as well to you, if not, it's already happened. You do get to a stage where sometimes we get a bit jaded. Sometimes we go, because it seems like a mammoth task, doesn't it? And energetically, it can be quite, tiring and stuff. And then something happens that makes you go, oh my God, that's me put back in line then. So that was my first poltergeist experience, when I asked the hotel about any activity around where we were. And believe it or not, oddly enough, it was in the room that we were in, right? I'm like, it's funny how nobody tells you that when you actually take the keys and go in that room. And I thought, out of all the entire place, right? And it was a huge place, it was always specifically that room. Would I have stayed in that room had I known? I might have thought twice about it. But yeah. And it was a bit like somebody having a really good clear out, like they'd hauled everything out. We're just going to chuck those clothes out. We're going to chuck those out. And I'm getting in and having a good clean. And it was allegedly somebody that had, because it was an old like manor type building with a modern complex, and I stayed in the old part. The modern part had like the spa and the swimming pool and stuff like that. And it was one of the old maids from way back that had come to some sort of untimely death there. She still obviously did the housekeeping like she would have done then.
Yes. And could you tell people, because so many people are scared of poltergeist, but I know like with the right energy protection and with dealing with the spirit, we can actually I don't want to, or some people actually enjoy and go on purpose on those tours to experience poltergeist. But like, how do you protect yourself, or how would you recommend other people when going on those tours, or maybe encountering poltergeist themselves? What's important to remember?
Well, having doubt that you're unprotected is a fear energy, right? That will I would kind of like question the energy of who you're attracting round about that point. In my experience, because I have met other ones, I've not really met any that have caused me harm or meant to cause me harm, right? Now, I put that down to it's not that they're good or bad, it's that sometimes they just need you to communicate. Or they need to communicate. And if you're not hearing them or not getting them, the majority of the time, they're just a bit hacked off because nobody's listened to them for a very long time. And they're in this energetic state of confusion, entrapment, right? Can you imagine, right? It being in this place, not realizing you passed, or you've passed, you're not happy about it at all because it was such a shock. So it's put you in that kind of limbo phase, right? And then all these people are coming backwards and forwards over many, many, many years, right? And nobody's actually paying any attention to you.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the time, once you find out what it is that they're trying to say to you, and to do that, this is when really good communication skills come in handy, right? You know, of, okay, so we've got to meet them on their level,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, you know, commiserate, empathize, sympathize. Oh my goodness, I know you're there.
Mm-hmm.
What's up? Tell me what's up. I'll try my best to try and understand you and convey it. And then, look, I'm not going to be able to hear you if you're throwing that across the room.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up once during the night and the bottom of my bed was hovering in the air. It was like as if they'd pulled it up. And the minute I woke up, they dropped it down and it hit the floor with a crash as well.
Mm-hmm.
That happened in my 30s, I've got to say. All right, when that was an unusual situation. And I tell you what, my heart nearly came out my chest, because it's obviously not something you expect to you see when you wake up. I must have woken up because I felt my centre of gravity change.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it was because they were trying to tell me something, you know, at the time, and communicating with me and wanted me to listen. So I take responsibility, because I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you before. I wasn't sure. But it's a bit like a child, isn't it? Right? A spoiled child, when, you know, you're not going to hear them when they're throwing a tantrum.
No.
And effectively, a lot of poltergeists are just spirits that are in limbo and they're throwing a tantrum.
I love that metaphor.
Yeah.
It's
Well, they
beautiful.
are.
And
Yeah,
I had one spirit as well.
One hand, probably not even that. When you get, you know, you get the residual, like rotten egg smell and the real nasty, low vibrational, like nasty.
So how do you clean it? How do you clear that residual energy? What are the ways how people can remove something when they feel something that doesn't serve or they wouldn't want to be?
Communicating, obviously,
Okay.
right? Having the confidence, right, to go. The initial problem, when somebody doubts or they go, oh, I've got to make sure my guides are in place, or I've got to put protection around me in that. Trust me, your vibration's high, you have protection anyway, okay? There's this wondering if you should do that is the very sort of breeding ground for the fear, low vibrational energy, and then we're surprised when we attract it in. So please know that you are protected, right? My people don't let anybody near me that are dodgy. Seriously, in all my 30 odd years, I think there's only been one occasion when it was somebody who wasn't very nice to children. And it was the girl's father, sadly. The minute he came within my orbit, and I said I could tell a vibration changed entirely. And I said, your dad's here, you want me to send him away? She said, yes. That's it. Straight away gone, right? So they shouldn't be able to get anywhere near you, right? That's to do with totally having faith in you know, your people round about you, as in your spirit people round about you, right? Absolutely understanding that if you've been, you've got this gift, right, and if you have done your development properly and stuff, and actually take responsibility to keep your energy fine-tuned and balanced, it's not called mind, spirit, and body for no reason, you're going to be okay. Okay, you are protected. Have faith in your abilities, right? You're in charge. If you feel something shouldn't be there, you can send them away. Some would send them to the light, as they say, right? But I would protect the property, right? Or put a bubble around the people, right? Or yourself temporarily, okay? Sometimes if you're not sure, I would put a mirrored bubble up round about where the mirrors are facing out the way, right? Because whatever energy is coming in, it'll reflect it straight back, you know, away from me and, you know, where I am. But then I use salt, right? And tea lights to protect the property, right? To kind of lock it down, to protect it, to neutralize things, and sage as well, right? Sage is very good at breaking the ions off the particles. It's a good antibacterial, bacteria as well. So if you've got a lot of heavy residual energy and you've got the particles round about, if they're weighing the particles down, the vibration goes down. Remember, everything's connected, so one affects the other. All right. Okay, so get some, sage, burn it and get right up into the corners as high as you can. All right. And do all the corners everywhere, right? And let the sage work its way through the energy down the way. And then what you do as well is you come in the front door with your tea lights and your salt. Now, if you've got wooden skirting boards, right, do this outside the property. Right?
Of course.
Just because salt will mark it, right? If it's carpets, you'll be fine, okay? So what we do is we come in the front door and into the left, because we're going clockwise to the furthest corner. We sprinkle salt from the door, and we go right to the furthest corner where we put a tea light and light the tea light. And then from there, right, this is a protection thing. From there, you go to the next furthest corner. It won't be in that room, it'll probably be in another room, yeah? And you sprinkle it right the way, and then go round into the other room, and then connect it from that wall right the way to the tea light, light it again. I always say the Lord's Prayer when I'm doing it as well. Many people are surprised at that, but being spiritual isn't discounting faith or faith in God, or yes, it means that we are able to combine all of them, and religion is man-made, and God's within all of us, and so we're tapping into that at that time. And yeah, I asked them to, this place is protected now, right? It's protected. You're not welcome here, right? Either go at the light or go somewhere else. Okay, it's as simple as that.
That's beautiful.
Sometimes
and so
they're that
important.
crabby, they might not want to sort things out, you see, but we've got to, and within hours you will feel the energy lighten up in the place. You do that right the way around until you get to the door again, right to the front door again. Yep. And that's when you would say, I protect this place, right, my abode. I protect this from any negative entities, any low residual energy, poltergeists that are meaning malice. This is, my domain, and you're not welcome here anymore. Please leave.
So useful. And you can then actually, once you know how to protect your space, you can actually have fun communicating with the spirit world. I had one, I call him like lodger. He was a tenant in my previous flat. When we were removing the wallpapers, we actually encountered a picture, a painting, and it was an auto portrait of Jimmy. Jimmy used to live in Victorian times. It was a painting dated from the 19th century. And actually Jimmy would come to the flat, but he was a very positive energy. But I had to establish boundaries that, look, this is my flat now. I don't mind you coming sometimes, but you need to make sure that you're not going to scare my children. And this was actually so unusual because it wasn't a spirit that needed to be taken back to light. He just would come sometimes, but he had that very, very light, positive energy. So this was my first encounter, with the Victorian period. He used to be, but he was very, very friendly, and I wasn't scared of him.
Yeah, well, that was good. And the majority, they just want a chat, right? A lot of the time. Sometimes they want you to do stuff. It can be difficult for them to understand that actually, we're like 200 years after then,
But they're so handy when you go, for instance, sightseeing, because I've been to so many castles, and you will probably relate to it. You go on a tour and you have a guide, but then actually we as psychic mediums connect with the spirit world, and then I'm getting the first-hand information from the spirit world about the places or what they used to do it, and I'm like, I frightened so many people, like saying, oh, that lady used to sit here, or like she's like, what? Yeah, that's the funny.
Exactly. She used to sit there, that's right. It's like, no matter of fact, you imagine being a child like that as well? I was like that, you know, where I just assumed everybody could see people, and you know, like to me they all live together, right? We're all together. And it's interesting you said about the children, right? Because children have an extraordinary amount of like their solar plexus energy, right, from them. So, you know, their lights shine brightly. So they can be attracting, you know, to all manners, really. And so, and I did this with my children as they were growing up. Because I we used to get things in the bedroom moving up and down the units and stuff on their own, right? One of the children noticed and said that, I once had a video. It was actually a DVD player switch itself on and off and say hello, but it wasn't even plugged in. It wasn't plugged in. That got put in the bin, right? But if you rub your hands together, because you've got the solar plexus, right? When the children are sleeping, and you just go in and very gently put your hand into their or the top of their solar plexus, and just brush it very gently down and say close.
I actually close intuitively my children's chakra. You see, I actually go and do it intuitively.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. And it does help. They get more restful sleep as well, because their you know, their solar plexus is very active, and you know, their vibrational levels really high. It can make them be restless during the night. And yes, it works on babies too.
So useful. Oh, Lara, you've got so much expertise. I feel like now I would like to talk a little bit about your other, well, something that you really know about, which is reading people's faces and iridology. I'll explain a little bit to the viewers and listeners for those who don't know, but I left an abusive relationship in 2018, and I should actually say I escaped one because I believe that my intuition saved my life. There was one moment when all of my internal alarms went off, and I heard, "You have to get out or one of you would be dead," meaning my children or I. So on that particular night, my ex behaved in a very frantic way, and I managed to run to the bathroom, locked myself, and I was lucky that I was able to text my friend, and they called the police. But long story short, the court quickly granted unsupervised contact, and my children had to meet with him. And anyone who knows anything about domestic abuse knows that just after you leave the abuser, the rage is at its peak. So it was a very dangerous period, and I was very fearful that my children would not come back alive, because he knew that my kids meant everything to me. On that night when I escaped, he kept screaming, you had taken away my wife, my house, my children. So in my mind, I thought like he would try to take them, meaning my children, from me. So this was an unbearable thought, but I started studying the characteristics of narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths. And this is how I bumped into Tori Hartman's channel, another amazing intuitive. I know Tori is also your friend, but this is how actually both of us then met, because I watched one of your interviews because I was very much drawn in 2018 to Chris Watts' murder case, because frightening as it can be, my ex resembles so much in his appearance, energy, personality, Chris Watts. So I needed to find in my mind, I needed to find something that would allow me to be relatively calm, knowing that my ex wouldn't kill my children. And I've actually realized, as much as it is horrible for people to think, is that my ex is a coward. So he would have never killed himself. He cares about what other people think about himself, and he's petrified of prison. So I was able kind of like rationalize, okay, maybe he's just narcissist, like, so he wouldn't then like kill them because he wouldn't kill himself, which might be illogical, but I needed to find something in my mind just to be able to, survive while my children were away. So I know you specialize in reading people's faces, and you have an experience in iridology. I know you used to profile murderers in prisons.
I did, yeah,
So could
yeah.
you tell me about that? Like, how did it start? How did you develop that knowledge?
Well, it was, you know, when it's a bit like yourself, you know, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right? I was fortunate enough to be at that start of your journey. And oddly enough, I tend to show up for people when things are really, really, you know, at a point, a crossroads, you know, like it could go either way here. And so I'm honored that I was at the start of your journey for being a medium, you know, as well. And the face reading part, I've got to say, I get that kind of, it was one of those things, you know, would I have known had I not been in that situation? You know, it's like Wonder Woman going into battle and all the, or Thor, you know, when your hammer appears and your tools appear and stuff like that. I wrote for a magazine called Paranormal Magazine years ago. And I did then, I wrote articles on a number of different things, but then there was an astrologer, David Wells, he left, and I ended up writing astrology, and then I put forward, I don't know why, but I just thought, you know, criminals, you know, high profile murderers, because there's different types of criminals as well, right? High profile murderers. I wonder, right, I had a compulsion to face read. Now, one day I was looking at Myra Henley and Ian Brady and just thought, do you know, if you removed their hair, Ian Brady looks like a woman and Myra Henley looks like a man, right? And so I'm thinking, oh, that's fascinating. You know, for me, that's, and I thought, right, okay. So then I start thinking, the face, you get palmistry, don't you? Right? And I thought, I'm going to read their faces, right? And there are measurements and stuff involved, but it was, you know, when they say the eyes are the window to the soul, this is where the iridology came from. I took part in a lecture at a place, it's now a hotel, but it used to be just a big manor house. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, wow, you know, all you could see were the eyes. And this one girl, she had, you know, her eyes, I'm saying girl, I didn't, you know, you didn't get told up front, but I thought, oh, she looks like she's died or just about to, right? It was just such a look in her eyes. And they told me afterwards, 3 weeks after the picture was taken, that she ended her life. Okay, so that made me like, oh God, you could tell from that. So then fast forward to the face reading, right? And the editor and owner like went for it, and I profiled these criminals and stuff. I'm not one to do lots of research or look into that. A, I can't be bothered for a start.
Yeah.
B, it just clutters up my mind when you're a medium. We are going in and out, dipping in and out of other people's lives. You know, our brains only have a certain capacity. I don't want lots of knowledge before. I didn't hear about Chris Watts until Tori asked me to profile for him. And even then, she only sent me a picture. Right? So I didn't know. It was more of a thing over, you know, in America. And because I don't watch the news and stuff, it was...
Yeah. Well, I didn't know too. Yeah,
exactly. So, and this is the best way. Even to this day, I still don't watch the news and stuff. So, you know, you get a much clearer sort of view of things without everybody's opinion being in it. Anyway, it went down a storm, by the way, and it kind of branched out from there. And then I decided, I wonder if I could go into prisons and profile, you know, so that, think how much of a help it would be, right, further down the line, if you could profile somebody's face up front and predisposition them to what actually, you know, they're predispositioned to, because the position of the ears in relation to the shape of the head could also indicate maybe size of brain. Like, for example, I noticed quite a lot of high profile murderers have a flat back of the head.
Okay.
Right? Now, there'd be other factors involved in that as well, but that alters the position of the ears, right? That certain way. And depending on the structure of the nose as well, depends on, is that until you actually know what to look for. If you're looking at somebody and you see that their ears are way down here, but then you notice that most people, their ears are maybe more nose length. So you then start to go, well, that's interesting. So I wonder what the difference is between that person and that person. Anyway, the paper in the prisons, they actually liked the idea, but they said the manpower would have been too expensive and the forms I had to fill in, I'm not kidding. They were like, it was huge. And I just thought at the time, the manpower, you couldn't justify, I couldn't at the time justify, doing that. And then understanding there's different levels of criminals as well. So I settled into face reading purely for reading purposes. And the people love it. And I love it because it tells me so much about them.
It's beautiful. And you also read people's palms as well, which is more conventional, but you can do that.
It is, the palm reading. Listen, I have even read, I once was invited onto Kerrang Radio. I don't know if you've heard of Kerrang.
Yes.
Yeah. Like millions of listeners and stuff. And I got there. They gave me champagne when I arrived there, and I thought, well, this is strange. I was treated like royalty. Turned out they raffled off a winkle reading. And the guy in the block of flats won it down the road from where they offered it. And I was like, so I'm thinking a winkle. I thought they meant shells, like the winkle shells on the beach, but it turned out it was a winkle. Well, luckily he didn't show up. Thank God, because I took my husband with me, but at the time, we're divorced now. But thank God we, and so I ended up reading one of the other presenters, boobs. I did boob reading. So you can read all sorts. You can do feet reading, you can do cheek reading, you can do like palm reading, iridology, phrenology, the head. In fact, recently I did umancy, which is reading eggs. Like eggs, like the hens lay and stuff, but reading eggs. People, you can read all sorts of stuff. Bones.
Beautiful.
But there's probably very few that could do the face reading, I've got to say.
Yes, it's very unusual. That's why I wanted you to share a little bit. The other unusual thing that I know you've done, I remember, well, you still probably have that crystal skull. You remember you had a visitation from that, that friend of yours, lady from the United States came.
That's it, Laura. Yeah, she still keeps in touch.
And she had those skulls. And was it Cliff, one of the skulls, or I don't remember?
Cliff, that's right, Clifford.
Could you tell about those skulls? What are those skulls? And I found it amazing.
They're crystal, right? So crystal, to look even like a crystal ball, it goes through various processes, right? A proper crystal one, right? You're not talking glass, because you get, a lot of cheaper ones, they're glass balls, but the actual crystal, which is usually quartz crystal, and it's broken down, it's melted, it's broken down and it's melted, and then it's, shaped, like that. And of course, there's a lot of work that goes into a skull as well, like that too, a lot of, that's why they're so expensive. But also because they're made of quartz crystal a lot of the time, they're made of other minerals as well. Sometimes you get black crystals, as well, and all sorts. So it depends what you really want to use it for, but they're very powerful. So it harnesses a lot of energy. So it does. Yep. It looks like a skull to us, but actually, right, in an energetic form, that because of the shape that it is, right, it alters energy within that shape as well. It's kind of like feng shui, right? In that feng shui where you round your corners off, or you put mirrors to reflect, negative energy, back out the house again, and all sorts of stuff. Don't have your bed facing a certain way, that sort of thing. Well, it's moving and manipulating energy. It's changing energy for transformation. Well, kind of like that's what a crystal skull is for. Majority of the time, it's used for healing.
Beautiful. Could you tell now, because you're also an amazing, well, you're an amazing astrologer, but you also use your tarot cards that you got them from your grandmother. You still got the same deck, I think, that you use with the red.
They're a bit thingy now.
What's the story behind them? And yeah, tell me how.
Well, the original, these were actually Russell Grant's, right? Because it's Russell Grant that designed these. When they're the Russell Grant Astro cards, these were personally Russell Grant's, because a friend of mine, the very same set is actually in one of my cases downstairs. I used them so much, you know, they were so worn, they were starting to fall apart. But she originally gave me those, and that same grandmother with the Rider-Waite pack, which is probably like, it's your rite of passage, isn't it? Everybody's got a set of Rider-Waite. Have you got a set of Rider-Waite cards?
No, I have different ones. Yeah, you see, I don't follow the.
Oh, which cards have you got?
Well, I'm not very drawn to using tarot cards. I use angel cards, but I do have Tori Hartman's tarot cards.
Right, okay.
But normally I just use Kyle Gray's angel cards. But Spirit normally just wants me just to channel without using anything. But yeah, whenever I'm drawn, then it's the angel cards.
Right, okay then. So, and they're Kyle's angel cards, yeah?
They are Kyle's, but then I recently, like, whenever there is a deck that's waiting for you, you're drawn and you go to a particular shop. So during my recent trip to London, I bought myself this deck. Well, the Guardian Angel Oracle, Debbie Malone.
Oh.
I've never heard, but I was just drawn. I entered that astrology shop, and I'm like, okay, that feels right. So whatever deck I'm drawn to, I just purchase it, and then I
Absolutely, that's how it should be. You know, they call you in, don't they? They're like, you over here, and you're like, where? Because you can't see them initially, and you just kind of gravitate. The Rider-Waite ones were originally my mum's, and she couldn't use them, and then she gave them to my nan, and she even typed up all the meanings because she was methodological like that, and she couldn't use them, so they lived in the cupboard for years. And in my early 20s, I was about 21, 22, I walked in, and they were on the edge of the bed, and she was having a good clear out, a spring clear out, and she was going to put them in the bin, and I was like,
really?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, they just looked familiar to me. Right? So they drew me in. It wasn't a scheduled trip to see my grandmother that day. I just took the baby for a walk and thought, well, I'll just go and visit my grandmother. So after a bit of wrestling back and forth, she agreed to give me them, and off I went. But have you seen the size of the book you get with them? It's probably about that big entirely, right? And it's like the writing's tiny. So I remember saying, I read the first page and I thought, holy cannoli, who can actually read this? Never mind memorize it. So I was a mature student at the time to get my qualifications so I could do my nursing. And I said, oh, I've got this set of tarot cards. Not real, because I didn't know what they meant, right? And of course, they're all going, oh, do us a reading. And I was too proud to say that I didn't know what they meant. So I was like, well, how hard can it be? Right?
That's the best way. Now you know.
So it was a struggle to begin with. You know, I was, you know, because you're really self-conscious and people are right there. Okay. But when they started coming back, saying all these things had happened, I then was like, shit, there's more of this than meets the eye. I know. So that's my original trade, I would say. But they're very good to work your intuitive muscle when it comes to the strengths of the messages that you deliver as a medium. Okay, so I quite often use them. All my students that teach, we start with the cards. Some have a really good aptitude for them, some not so much, but it's just a stepping stone to, you know, working up the different levels, you know, I call it jumping, you know, jumping up the different levels in order to get as high as you can to get the best information, you know, possible on that high vibrational frequency. Vacuuming is good for that too.
Okay. And could you tell a little bit about your own mediumship? Well, I'll call it development. I know you could see spirits from when you were a baby, a toddler, but you've mentioned a little bit about you starting doing card readings for people. If you can talk a little bit about you starting your mediumship readings, how has it developed? And later on, how do you see spirits? How do you communicate? Anything that you find useful to share with the viewers and listeners?
Yeah, I didn't know I was a medium until my early 30s, right? Everybody else knew I was a medium except me, right? Which is often the case. Anybody watching this or listening to this, it's not like you get up one day and go, oh, I know, I'm going to be a medium. It's not like that. It kind of, the universe conspires, right? Until you realize that the actual path that you're on or the actual place that you're in, somebody then reflects back to you that that's what you are or who you are. Right. So I was actually reading for this woman one day, right? Card reading. And then I saw somebody stood behind her, right? Who looked very like her. And I was like, I felt like saying, don't look now, but your brother's behind you, right? David's behind you. He said, I have to tell you that he can walk now. And that he was 32. I said, he's 32, and to tell you that he can walk now. And she burst into tears, absolutely sobbing her heart out. And I'm sat there going, oh, I thought, I've really hurt this woman. I'm really sorry, and I thought, I don't like this. I'm not doing this again. That's that, I thought, no. And she stopped crying eventually. And I said, after about a whole box of hankies and stuff, and she says, that's my brother David. He was diabetic. They amputated his legs. And 6 weeks later, he died, and he was 32. And I was like, oh. And I thought, oh, right, that's why he said he could walk now. She said it was the best thing that anybody could have said to her. Just, I remember looking at him thinking, he just looked like a male version of her. Well, yeah, they were very, very alike. Even down the long hair, he had it tied back in a ponytail. But that was the moment that I realized I was a medium. And I saw him as I see you now, and I heard him as I would hear you.
Yes.
But it developed further as I went along that if I've got a really good connection, I can even taste in my mouth the last food they ate before they passed. Right? Which isn't always nice because I can't stand fish. And if there was a woman once who had, in fact, that she thought she'd killed her husband because the last thing he ate was her fish paste sandwich. So she thought he was in bed upstairs, right? And he kept hammering on the ground with a stick, right? Shouting at her that, to come up. Well, eventually she went up and, what do you want? She'd been up and down so many times. He said, I'm hungry. So she went off, made him a fish paste sandwich, which apparently was his favorite, right? And took it up to him. Left it there. Well, the man must have taken a mouthful and then he died. Right. So she went downstairs and he must have been dead for a couple of hours before she went back. So it was awful quiet. Went back up the stairs and so she thought in that time that she'd killed him with the fish paste sandwich. So when he came through, and he said, I tasted that goddamn awful fish paste sandwich. But I'd tell her that he had swallowed the sandwich. It wasn't that. He just, it must have been the effort of eating. He just lay back and then he just died. So again, yep, there's pros and cons with everything. But sometimes you can smell the perfume or aftershave that they wore, right? To even see that, how, because really mediumship's about healing others. Right, that you create a shift in the person, even if it's a small one, enough for healing to take place within them. They often don't know that themselves until, a few weeks later. And I'll always say to people, look, you'll probably feel like shit later on, and you probably will feel tired, but you good night's sleep, you'll start to feel better tomorrow. And inevitably they do. I had one woman once who her husband had passed, and she'd literally been in bed for the entire 4 months, 2 weeks, and 36 hours, or whatever it was, that he'd passed. And she eventually came for a reading with me. And she went back to bed, and then the next day, it was the first day she got up and opened the curtains. And she called me to thank me. So that's what mediumship does. That's what connecting with spirit and giving messages does, regardless of people round about going, oh, there's nothing in it, or oh, I don't believe in that and this, that, and other. But I believe in the results. I believe in the effect that it has on people. I believe in the transformation of their spirit, right? And I believe that hearing something that only they could know is incredibly shifting and transformational. Why wouldn't you want to be part of that?
Exactly. It's such a humbling experience, and mediumship, again, like with me, it's nothing I've ever planned, but it's the only thing, well, so far, that ignites my soul. And I know that this is the calling. And every time I have some crazy ideas of maybe detouring and doing something else, then my clients send me evidence, or spirit brings me information because they really want me to stay on track. And actually knowing that we can help other people with their healing, that they can move on, it's something that makes me feel so happy. And yeah, I just can't experience it, explain it. There are no words. You know how it makes us feel, where we can like really support our clients and teach them how they can communicate with their loved ones, how they can establish that relationship, and for them to trust that afterlife, like that life continues, that they haven't actually lost their loved ones, that yes, they are and with them in the physical world, but they're still nearby. It's just so beautiful.
It is. And it's, I think a lot of people do probably have it done about at least once in their life. Many people won't actually say that to others because it's a very personal thing as well. But it's, and there's probably been some bad experiences out there. I know there has been, you know, from what I hear, you know, others saying to me and stuff. But if you find somebody, so always feel like you should go to somebody that you vibe towards, because then that's the person that'll be able to communicate at their best ability with your loved one and you.
Beautiful. Lara, could you share now what are your offerings, like, and then how can people find you? Like, I know like people can, you can help people with so many things, and I'm going to add description, well, links to all of your social media, but if you could summarize, like what can people...
Yeah, I'm in Facebook, Lara Wells Live, on Instagram at Lara Wells TV. And Lara Wells Psychic on TikTok as well. And not, yeah, I'm doing I'm rebranding at the moment and redesigning, but my new site's called Love Lara.
Okay, I love it. And you do mediumship readings, yes? And you do card readings, or what else do you do?
Yeah, I predict with cards, but I do card readings, I do heal, I teach and mentor as well. And I also, the whole mentoring and coaching and that is living your best kick-ass life, but spiritual life, right? As in, you know, really harnessing the energy. We're all very powerful, but we only use a certain amount of it. I don't know where I'd be if I couldn't access that. I've had times where I've had, you know, like went through relationship separations and taken 6 months out and that, and I always feel like crap. Like I'm just using one arm. The minute I do that, right, it's just like using the whole part of you. And so if some people are watching this or listening to this and feel that they're just living just a fraction of the life that they have the potential for, yes, drop me a message, get in touch with me. That's the kind of thing I do, is, you know, is I'll take you from where you are to where your potential is and where you're destined to be.
Hey, well, I love it. And could you share with the viewers and listeners any final thoughts, any messages that you would like to leave them with?
What you see in life is a product of what has already happened, right? So when people say what you believe what you see, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that? Believing is seeing, or seeing is believing, right? Which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? So if you go, well, when I see it, I'll believe it, right? But when you're seeing it, it's already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's based on past stuff that's already happened. The hard part, the courageous and bold part, is having a belief in something that you don't yet see.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And to believe in that, even in yourself, right, is that you have the capabilities of being more than where you are right now. It probably is the difference between people that just go round and round in the same circle all the time, don't they? And just, and then they go, oh, nothing ever happens for me, or I don't know, life is just the same all the time, no matter what I do. It's just to flip the mindset. And also, how do I go about feeling spirit? Well, so you switch the system from seeing, feeling, from feeling, seeing. So we become, as a medium, we're more feel-see.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We feel energy, and then we see in our mind's eye, that other eye, what how that is. If you just flipped your system that way, just entertain the idea, just
Mm-hmm.
like humor me a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and then pay attention to what you see in your mind's eye by just indulging the feeling side.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It will make the difference to you. It will open up a whole pathway and world that was in the dark to you before. And and with that, you then believe in miracles.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, what a beautiful message. I just want to express my gratitude
Thanks
for
for
you
having me. Thank
coming
you.
and speaking with me. It's been an honor. And yeah, I definitely need to have you back at some point because there's so many subjects we haven't covered, but
Yeah.
at least
No, I want to have you in my page as well, when we do a live and stuff. So that'd be great.
Yes.
I'll get in touch with you about that.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to all of the viewers and all of the listeners. Goodbye.